My name is Mr. Scott Clayton. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Newtown High School. I'll be hosting today's event. Today is the 7th annual Newtown High School Veterans Day Assembly. As long as Newtown has been in school on Veterans Day, Newtown High School has had a Veterans Day Assembly and Luncheon as a way to commemorate your service. Thank you. First up will be our Newtown High School Chamber Choir, and I would ask that you please rise for the singing of our national anthem. Very much. Newtown High School Chamber Choir. Our first speaker today, well, first I'd like to welcome some folks here, members of the community. We have Dr. Janet Robinson, Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Bill Hart, Chairman of the Board of Education, Mrs. Pat Rosa, First Selectman, recently re-elected, Mr. Joe Morris, former First Selectman. I think somewhere in the crowd is Mr. Will Rogers, member of the Board of Selectmen. He's here. Thank you for coming. So our first speaker today, Dr. Janet Robinson, Superintendent of Schools.
Good afternoon. I am honored to be here today in the presence of so many people who have served our country with such distinction. You represent all the branches of the service, and as such, you are inexorably linked in your common experience. Whether you served 2 years or a career, stateside or abroad, during peace or conflict, you put your lives on hold for the greater good of our country. Today, we express our gratitude to you and your families. I have observed over the years that when one vet sees another, sometimes it's the hat with the squadron or the ship name on it, and I see a number of those here. They are drawn into a conversation about where and when they served. There is an immediate bond for a comrade in arms. And so many of you tell me what a significant time of your life it was. I have also seen or experienced the sacrifices that your families have made. Missing you, writing you, worrying about you, holding the home together in your absence. My dad was a career Navy pilot, deployed for 6 to 9 months at a time on a carrier. We would get dressed up and greet the carrier in San Diego on the completion of the tour with thousands of other families. We would scan all those uniforms lined up on the decks trying to pick out our dad. The excitement was incredible. Later, as a Navy wife myself, I waited anxiously for the C-130 to land at Barbers Point that marked the return of my husband after 9 to 18 weeks of his deployment in Vietnam, the Philippines, or wherever. That grubby flight suit was a beautiful sight. Even today, when I see any news release of military men or women returning to their families, I can't stop the wave of emotion that brings tears to my eyes. All of Newtown, our country, wants to convey to all of you and your families, we appreciate your sacrifices and honor your service. Thank you from the bottoms of our hearts.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. And on the way out, you can actually see photos of Dr. Robinson's husband and father in their aircraft posted outside the school. We'll show you some more of those later. Next, Mrs. Pat Lodra, First Selectman of Newtown.
I have 2 brief stories to tell you. The first one is set in 1918. It is November 11th, and the place is a railroad car in a forest in France. It is 5 a.m., and gathered around are the principal representatives of the countries involved in the First Great War, World War I. These men agreed that armed conflict would end that day at 11 o'clock in the evening. After a long year of battle, intense battle involving 4,734,991 total service members worldwide, finally armed conflict would come to an end, the armistice at last. Even on that last day, however, injury and death happened. The American Expeditionary Forces suffered more than 3,500 casualties on that last day. 3,500 soldiers who would never return to their homeland, to their families, to their loved ones. And death took a toll right up to the last tick of the clock, nearing that 11th hour. American Henry Gunther was killed at 10:59 p.m., 60 seconds before the armistice came into force. Supply Sergeant Gunther, 25 years old, from a German-American neighborhood in East Baltimore, is generally recognized as the last soldier killed in action in World War I. Let's fast forward now to another place in time. It is August 6, 2011, high over a desert in Afghanistan. A rocket-propelled grenade is launched from a rocky outcropping. Suddenly, 30 Americans are dead. Among them is 31-year-old Brian Bell, a Navy SEAL. Brian, born and raised in Stanford, an Eagle Scout, graduate of Stanford Catholic, with aspirations of becoming an astronaut and finished with his military career. Brian's uncle and aunt are Newtown residents, whom I recently came to know through their request that a memorial flag from our Main Street flagpole be used to grace his nephew's funeral service. So I do know a little bit about Brian's achievements, his passions, and his dreams. What I wonder, though, about Brian and about Sergeant Henry Gunther is how they would have turned out had they lived. Would our world be different because of their contributions to society? Would Brian have become the astronaut to lead us to new discoveries in space? Would Henry Gunther have fathered the son or daughter to discover a cure for polio, the scourge of the time, or cancer, the scourge of our time? I tell you this story about Henry Gunther and Brian Bell because when we think about veterans as real people, we understand the true value and consequence of service. When we put a face and a name on a soldier, we become more aware of their sacrifices and the sacrifices of their families. All of those soldiers who have served our nation for so many years have offered themselves as the buffer between the privileges of freedom and an enemy who would take that away from us. These many men and women who protect us and preserve our country must be known to us as real people, with hopes and dreams and lives to be lived. Veterans are our neighbors, our friends, the kids we graduate from high school with, the boy or girl we dated at the senior prom. That is the story of our veterans from the beginning of our history. These men and women have stepped out of their lives, as we would know it, into an arena dominated by sacrifice, discipline, duty, and service to others. The freedoms we enjoy today, tomorrow, and far into the future are a gift from veterans who secured them, and that would be our story through time immemorial. I'd like to end by reading the citation that accompanies the flag that is a gift to the Brian Bell family. For more than 135 years, Newtown has proudly flown a flag on a pole erected in the center of our Main Street. The flag waving on a grand pole reaching 55 feet into the sky, so awe-inspiring and beautiful, stands as a constant symbol of our love of country. We are proud that a Newtown flag graced the funeral of Brian Bell, a Navy SEAL recently killed in action in Afghanistan. Brian, too, loved his country and served all of us with dedication, commitment, courage, and the ultimate sacrifice. As we wrap our hearts and minds around the memory of Brian and his goodness, let's imagine, too, that the flag, so precious to Newtown, is wrapped around his shoulders in gratitude and love. He is now an unofficial keeper of the flag for Newtown and for all of our country. Navy SEAL Brian Bell symbolizes much of what is right and good, what is worth fighting for. We are humbled by his sacrifice and ever grateful that our privileges and opportunities are protected by soldiers like Brian. Thank you.
I'll now ask members of the Newtown High School Guidance Honor Association to read for us the history of Veterans Day.
Veterans Day is observed on November 11th. The holiday was originally called Armistice Day, and it commemorated the end of World War I on November 11, 1918. Fighting stopped at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. In 1919, on the first anniversary of the World War I armistice, President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation expressing pride in the heroism of those who had died during the war. Business stopped for 2 minutes starting at 11 a.m., and it later became customary to observe 2 minutes of silence from 11 a.m. Many states made Armistice Day a state holiday in the 1920s and 1930s, and in 1938, the Congress of the United States declared it a federal holiday. In 1954, the name of the holiday was changed from Armistice Day to Veterans Day to honor those who had served in World War I and the Korean War. Today, the holiday honors all veterans. In 1968, Congress changed the date of the holiday to the fourth Monday in October to give Americans a 3-day weekend. But because of the significance of November 11th to many people, the traditional date was restored by law in 1978.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call another member of the Newtown High School Guidance Honor Association to read one of my favorite historical pieces, the Gettysburg Address.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who have gathered their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it. Far above our poor power to add or detract, the world will little know nor long remember what we say here. But it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to us, the unfinished work which they fought for here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us that these honored dead we take increased devotion, that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people by the people, for the people shall not perish from earth. November 19, 1863.
Thank you very much. Well done. I'd now like to call a Newtown High School staff member. Mr. Rich Giason is a 1989 graduate of the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis. He served aboard the USS Elliott. He's here to share some thoughts on Veterans Day with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I don't have any prepared remarks, so I'll try to keep it brief. A few weeks ago, when Mr. Clayton asked me if I'd be willing to speak at the assembly, I said sure. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say, so we agreed that I would just come up and share some personal reflections on how I ended up on the path of service and kind of what it's meant to me personally. So it's an honor to be here. Veterans and guests, welcome. Thank you again for your service. It is appreciated by all, both by your brothers in arms and by civilians alike. How I ended up in the military was kind of an interesting story. I didn't set out on that path. It wasn't like I knew from a young age that I wanted to, be in the service. It kind of was the beginning of the path of my life, which was basically follow where it takes you. Do the best you can and try always to keep doors open. That was my personal philosophy then. That's my personal philosophy now. Keep doors open and you can make choices, and that's a lesson for the young folks as well as maybe some of us that are a little bit gray on the sides. The other thing I learned is that as I just coming into this day was I thought about maybe breaking out an old uniform and wearing it and see some of our uniformed service members. But what I realized, and I think the veteran guests here probably have realized this too, is those military uniforms, they're made to shrink over time. They don't fit anymore. It's just I can't figure out why. But anyways, I did not set out to be in the military. It was actually my athletic participation in high school that led me to go to the Naval Academy. I was fortunate enough to be recruited to play football for Navy amongst many other schools, and just decided to go there. And I can recall the day when I told my parents that I was interested in applying to the Naval Academy, and honestly, I'm not sure they thought it was a good idea. This was back before many of you in this room were born, and I think the country was still getting over the hangover of Vietnam, and attitudes and opinions about military service. I think we're a little bit different than they are today. But they were supportive, and I went ahead and followed the process, and was fortunate enough to be accepted, and it ended up being something that set the trajectory of my life in a direction that I think it would have been very different had I not followed that path. I had a lot of fun there and made a lot of good friends and learned a lot about leadership and responsibility that I think I brought forward in my life. Had some fun playing football too, even though we weren't quite as good as I wish we would have been sometimes. But there was lessons in that too. I was fortunate to serve aboard a USS naval ship out of San Diego. It's the place you gotta be if you gotta be in the Navy, I think. And we did 2 tours to the Middle East and traveled many places around the globe. And in those experiences were part of what made me who I am today and who I'll be going forward. You see things about the world that we just take for granted. And it's just unbelievable the appreciation you have for this country and the freedom that we have when you go out and witness firsthand the literally billions of people in the world that don't enjoy those same freedoms. And I know it's cliche and there's bumper stickers that say it, but we owe a debt of gratitude to all veterans if we really truly enjoy that freedom, because that's really what it's all about. That's what we're there for. So that's my main thought. I think that's what I want to leave you with. Thank you to veterans. It's a service experience. You get as much as you give, just like any other service experience. It may not be for all, but if it's something that you think you might be interested in, it'll be rewarding to you in more ways than you could ever imagine. And the nice bonus along the way is that you are providing an unbelievably valuable and appreciated service to your country and, frankly, to the world. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giusin. Thank you very much. I remember the day I enlisted. It was actually, my parents had a similar reaction. My date of enlistment was December 18th, 1998, and it happened to be the same day that President Clinton launched the bombing campaign in Iraq. My parents pretty much thought I was crazy for enlisting on the very same day that we attacked the nation again. Nonetheless, it's made all the difference in my life. So, I'd now like to move to our featured speaker, someone I've known quite a while, I think 7th or 8th grade. Corporal Dan Gaeta, United States Marine Corps, 1992 to 1996. He was a forward scout observer. He has served in Operation Restore Hope, Continue Hope in Mogadishu, Somalia. He served in Operation Deny Flight in Bosnia and Operation Restore Democracy in Haiti. He was meritoriously promoted platoon honor graduate from boot camp in Parris Island, South Carolina. Company high shooter, marksmanship expert, pistol expert. Physical Fitness Excellence Award. He was the Armed Forces Mr. Mediterranean Bodybuilding Champion. He's a 2-time Marine of the Quarter. Medals and ribbons include the National Defense Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Navy Achievement Medal, NATO Service Medal, United Nations Service Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Southwest Asia, Joint Meritorious Unit Citation, Connecticut Wartime Service Medal, Post-Service Accomplishments, 1996 University of Connecticut Dean's List, 1998 he was the University of Connecticut walked-on the football team. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in organizational management, and he was selected as a presidential management fellowship finalist. He's married. His wife Erin, who just ran the New York City Marathon. He has two daughters, Sophia and Isabella, and he's the owner of Private Studio Personal Fitness in Bethel, Connecticut. Please welcome Corporal Dan Gator.
Students, distinguished guests, my fellow veterans, thank you for being here today. What makes a U.S. veteran? Every year we take this day to honor those of us that gave up our freedom to ensure the freedom of generations to come. But what is it? What is that thing that makes our veterans special? Is it the selfless decision we make to leave the comfort and safety of our home? Or is it choosing to endure the anxiety, the stress, the pressures that come when we voluntarily give up our freedom to honor a contract, an oath, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic? Who are these brave men and women? Who are these brave men and women that endure challenges of boot camp, the long early morning runs, the tiring long distance marches with heavily loaded backpacks, rifles, food, ammunition, radios, batteries, and equipment? And let's not forget the screaming drill instructors. Who are these brave men and women that endure hours upon hours of classes of U.S. and military history as though the information is being poured into our tired minds? Each and every detail memorized, thus becoming part of our new DNA. Who are these brave men and women that strive to earn the honor of being forever called a soldier, sailor, airman, or marine, each having to prove themselves worthy of carrying upon their backs the history, the battles, the struggles, and the great achievements of each and every veteran that has served or died before us? Who are these brave men and women that go to far-off lands, sometimes for years at a time, to fight and die for you and me? I will tell you who they are. They are your brothers. They are your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, and our children. But they are also you. If you look around you today, some of your friends, some of your classmates will make these same sacrifices. They will be forever changed and our nation forever indebted. Today's living veterans, the ones we honor here and across our nation on this day, represent the bloodline, the living memory of all the sacrifices endured before them. They are what make America strong. They are what keep America free. They are the protectors and the guardians of our liberties. And each of you that gather here today to honor and commemorate our sacrifices, you all, every one of you, teacher, student, administrator, volunteer, each and every one of you are what makes America worth fighting and dying for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaeta. I think the class of 2012 has had 3 people so far enlist in some branch of the armed forces. I think we have a couple Marines. Yeah, we'll clap. John Decker, Victor Rock. And maybe somewhere out there is Laurel Speed, who's also applied to the Naval Academy. I'm sorry if I missed anyone, so let me know if you decide to do that. Newtown High School Wind Ensemble will now entertain us with a song called Patriotic Sequence. Thank you very much, Mr. Director and members of the Newtown High School Wind Ensemble. I'd now like to call a member of our audience to share a few words with you. Captain Donna Monteleone Randall, United States Army Captain. She served 9 years total, 5 years active duty, 4 years in the reserves. She's a Newtown resident and currently has 2 twins, a boy and a girl, at the Newtown Middle School. She'd like to share a few words with you about her experience in the United States Army. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton, for inviting me to say a few words. I had to plan on speaking, so I've been jotting notes. Thank you, Dr. Robinson, Mr. Hart, and for being here. Honored veterans, my brothers and sisters in arms, you you all know from your own experiences what it was like being so far from home, away from your mom and dad, and sisters and brothers and your friends and family. But the people I really would like to speak to today are our students here. It was 1974, I had just graduated high school, and I was a child in the 60s, and saw Neil Armstrong laying on the moon, and my parents said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be an astronaut. Everybody wanted to be an astronaut in those days. So my dad said, well, you're going to have to go to university, you're going to have to study something, and I was really good at math and physics, so I said, I'd do that. He said, well, you're going to have to join the military, because at that time they didn't have civilians in the NASA program. So I went to a school that used to be called Brooklyn Poly, became Polytechnic Institute in New York, now it's Polytechnic University. I wound up majoring in math and physics, got a degree in meteorology and oceanography. I was in the second ROTC class that allowed women in. Before then, only men were allowed in. In 1978, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army, went into the Signal Corps, and my whole life changed. I became all that I could be. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but it really does happen. When you put on a uniform, every goodness, every possibility, every piece of you that is deep down inside that you don't even know you have comes to the surface. All the best of you comes up and comes out. I went from basic training to Fort Gordon, Georgia. Went into Korea in the 2nd Infantry Division. Also changed my life being so far from home. From there I went to serve for 2 years in California. I got to know the Marine Corps very well. It was the only woman officer in a joint Army Marine Corps exercise. Again, all science related, so if you think that being in the military is only about carrying a weapon, it's not. There's more science in the military these days than you can imagine. From there, I had the opportunity to go to Keesler Air Force Base. I was chosen to attend the telecommunications staff officer course. I met more foreign officers than you can imagine, and some of them are still friends of mine till this day. I got to participate in more cultural and religious holidays than you could ever imagine here in Newtown. It's being in the military is such a wonderful, broadening experience. When I left active duty, I went into the reserves. I was a ROTC instructor at Seton Hall University. I was a company commander. I was down in Fort Gordon, Georgia. I enjoyed my years as a company commander more than I can tell you. I left the military and went into corporate life. After that, I had a wonderful opportunity to meet my husband. We got married and we went on a whirlwind tour around the world on corporate assignments. We have twins who are now in 8th grade. But what I want to share with you is what happened in 2005 when we moved to Newtown. Our twins were in 2nd grade, and my son's teacher said to me, we have a letter writing exercise in January. She says, I really would like the kids to write a letter to someone, not just a fictional person. She said, you were in the military. She says, can you help me find someone to write to? I said, sure. I didn't know anybody in town because we just moved in August, so I got in the car, went over to the Newtown Bee and met Lori Gorst, whose son Dylan was in Kuwait. Went to all of the churches, and I got a list. And that year, 50 letters were sent by 2nd graders at Sandy Hook Elementary School to soldiers overseas. One of them was Colonel Bill Rogers. He sent T-shirts from Sandy Hook Elementary School to every Newtown resident. 7 years later, that project, that was the brainstorm of a 2nd grade teacher, has gone throughout the entire school district. It's gone to other towns. Last year, Mrs. Loger, Ms. Park, and Dr. Robinson were all with us when we invited all the selectmen from all the different towns who sent letters to troops. This year, we've got Trumbull, Danbury, Monroe. Being in the military is not just about putting on a uniform and following orders. It's about becoming someone evolved. It will give you life experiences that you can never imagine. So whether you're a man or a woman, young person or a senior person, you can reach out, help our military, you can help influence young people, you can do so many things. And on this wonderful day, Veterans Day, I want to not only thank all of you, but thank all of you who will become our future military and the future mothers and fathers of our military. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Gator mentioned something, and I think some of the teachers will laugh. Our government teachers, I see Mrs. Hardy here somewhere, and this is Early, somewhere in the back of the room. Here it is, Stevens and Government. It's actually right here in my pocket. You see, it's always a joke, but there's a copy of the Constitution that I keep in my jacket pocket. I really do. Useless trivia. I'll now call on members of the Newtown High School Guidance and Honor Association to introduce veterans. Ask when you are called, please stand and be recognized.
Will veterans from World War II please stand and be recognized? Will veterans from the Korean War please stand and be recognized? Will veterans from the Vietnam War please stand and be recognized? Will veterans from the Gulf War please stand and be recognized? Will veterans from Operation Enduring Freedom or Afghanistan please stand and be recognized? Will veterans from Operation Iraqi Freedom please stand and be recognized? If there are any veterans who served in Panama, Lebanon, Grenada, Haiti, Bosnia, Kosovo, Somalia, or other unnamed conflicts, please stand and be recognized.
served or are currently serving in the armed forces. Mr. Jesse Bailey. Mr. Steve George, Moody Cook. Mr. Rich Geisen, Navy. Mr. Fred Taylor, Army. Mr. James Rivera, Navy. And our host, Mr. Scott Clayton, the Army.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to call upon our Newtown High School Wind Ensemble. I'm going to play a song that's a personal favorite. The roughly 8 years that I was in the Army, about 3.5 to 4 years, I actually served in one of the U.S. Army infantry bands. And when we would tour around the country or wherever, this song was always the highlight of the program. No matter how complicated any other pieces were, any other songs, this song, as easy as it is to play, has always been the highlight. The song, Armed Forces Salute, is a compilation of all of the military hymns. So what you will hear, when you hear your service branch hymn, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, I'd like you to stand and be recognized. sorry. My colleague, Mr. Rivera, won't let me forget. Thank you very much, Linda Gonzalez. And Mr. Ecker, thank you. Final portion of our program, I want to share some things with you. A couple weeks ago, my son, actually my children got something home from the mail, in their Friday folder at their elementary school, asking for photos of family members, of different veterans that kids have in their family. Although it seemed kind of elementary at the time, I thought, what a good idea to have here at Newtown High School. So I put out an email to the staff, asking staff members to share with me photos and some personal histories of family members that they have or have had long years back serving in the armed forces. So what I received, I expected to get maybe a half a dozen photos. I think I have close to 40 some odd photos. And so I would encourage you, and I'm going to show you the photos in just a minute. I would encourage you, when you leave this auditorium shortly, to take a look at the display cases that are outside here adjacent to the main office. And what you will see is a compilation of the large amount of Newtown staff members who have direct connections to veterans from all walks of the armed forces. All different conflicts. We have some staff members, myself included, I think Mrs. Hannah as well. We have relatives that actually fought in the Civil War that we can trace our roots back to. So I'm going to show you some of these photos and try to narrate it along the way. We need the screen now. So when people think about not knowing who veterans are or thinking that, oh, it's the military is just for some other people, you're going to see here some people that might surprise you. Not only were they veterans, but some are actually still currently serving. Okay, folks, here you have Mrs. Marty, school counselor. Her brother is a naval officer. He's a helicopter pilot, and he flies for one of the SEAL teams. Mr. Edwards, this is his grandfather, tech sergeant, served in World War II. Mr. Pompano, his brother's a lieutenant colonel, active duty in the Air Force right now. Talk about family history. There's Mr. Pompano's father, served in the Navy during World War II. Mr. Ravello, his brother, I'm going to guess that's a C-130, and his brother is an Air Force major and is a pilot, active duty. Dr. Robinson, she mentioned before, it's not only her husband, but her father, both naval aviators. Ms. Ramsey, chemistry teacher. Both her father and her uncle served in Vietnam together. The photo was a complete bizarre set of circumstances. As I read through the email, they just happened to run into one another in an airbase in Vietnam. Dr. Linda Gate, our assistant superintendent, that's her father. And her brother, father on the left, her brother on the right. Her brother just retired, a lieutenant colonel in the Army, served in one of the special forces groups in Afghanistan. Mr. Ciccarello's father served in the Army. Interesting story here. He found these photos in a pile of pictures at the Smithsonian. Mr. Ciccarello's uncle in World War II. And he shared with me a story about how when he went to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. a short time ago as being one of the most moving experiences of their lives. Mrs. Sherman's uncle was a Marine, World War II. Mrs. Sherman's father also served in World War II, just couldn't find a picture. Dr. Hogue, grandfather, served in World War II. Mrs. Hoffman, that's actually her father, not her grandfather. Her father served in World War II. Thank you. Mrs. Zygmunt's brother, currently served in the Navy. I know she's out today, but his most recent deployment was to Japan to help shut down one of the nuclear reactors from the earthquake a short time ago. Mrs. Hardy's uncle is a Navy corpsman in Vietnam. Mr. Case's grandfather served in World War II. Mr. Canfield's father, science department chair. Look at the resemblance. You have to see it. I don't know, is Mr. Canfield here somewhere? Quite a resemblance. Mrs. Brownell's father works in the Library Media Center. Served in World War II. Mrs. Fiak's father and uncles served in the Navy and the Army, served in Korea and World War II. Mrs. Cappington's grandfathers and grandparents. Mrs. Ward's grandfather, Wes Ward, served in World War II. Mrs. Oster, guidance director. Her husband was in the Marine Corps, her brother's in the Marine Corps, her father and her uncle also served in the Army. That's her husband on the left and her brother on the right. Her brother's actually an active duty Marine Corps officer. Reserve officer. Mrs. Corbo, the attendance office, that's her husband, served in the Marine Corps. Mrs. Sheridan, one of our math teachers, that's her nephew, served in Iraq. Her father also served as well, but she didn't have a photo. That's not a file photo, that's actually him in Iraq. That's her nephew in Iraq. Mr. Giason. There he is. On the left, that's him receiving his diploma at the United States Naval Academy, and that must be a yearbook photo or something like that. Mr. George, Marine Corps. That's in front of the Iwo Jima Memorial at Arlington. Paris Island. A replica of the Iwo Jima Memorial. Mr. Rivera, thank you. 85 or whatever that is. Finally, yeah, that's me. One thing that's kind of funny to point out, you go back, you see all these pictures here, everybody's smiling and everything like that, it looks real funny. Then you get to like me and Mr. Rivera, and Mr. George, and Mr. Gibson. We all had good experiences, but whoops. Well, you understand what I'm trying to say. It just doesn't show that. So, this pretty much concludes our assembly today, excuse me. Hold on. I'd like to thank, once again, Mr. Dan Gata for his remarks. Thank you very much for presenting. I'd like to thank Dr. Robinson, Pat Loja for their remarks. Appreciate it. Mrs. Montaneo Randall, once again, I put her on the spot, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. Most of all, though, I'd like to thank every veteran sitting in this audience right now. Thank you very much. This event,
as one more thank you, and he's too humble to say it himself, but he's the one responsible for putting it all together. One thank you to Scott Clay for putting all this together.
this event cannot take place without the students of Newtown Culinary, Newtown Greenery, Guidance Honor Association, Chamber Choir, and Wind Ensemble, especially Mrs. Madsen, Mr. Eckhart, Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Cross, and the entire secretarial staff. Folks, before you leave, students, we got about 10 minutes or so left of class. In order that we have a orderly end of the school day, I'm going to ask that you go to your last period class and just wait till the bell rings. I know you're going to head in the hall, but you have to make sure that you